Hey everyone, how's it going? Grizzly Bear here with another Team Fortress 2 video. And right off the bat, I want to be upfront with you guys. We're going to be talking about competitive TF2 today. And I do not have a ton of experience with competitive TF2. But if you haven't been paying attention to the competitive TF2 world, I-58 just ended this weekend. And it's one of the largest, if not the largest, I'd say, TF2 event of the year as far as competitive goes. So with that event happening, and it being over and seeing the community's reaction, you know, I thought about it a little bit and I wanted to talk about competitive and Valve's part. I've been seeing a lot of posts on RTF2 talking about how Valve needs to get out there. Valve, go out there and sponsor a TF2 tournament just like you do for Dota. If you guys don't know, Valve does a tournament for Dota 2 every year called the International. This year the prize pool reached over $20 million. So it's a pretty big deal. So naturally, a lot of people are saying, Valve is sponsoring this, why don't they do something for TF2? So what I want to talk about today is why haven't they? What are the issues that are causing TF2 not to be looked at by Valve? So let's start with the positives. What does TF2 have going for it? What makes this game such a great game? The number one thing, in my opinion, is the community. We hear about it, we talk about it all the time, but I think we still take it for granted. We have a wonderful community. Everybody's welcoming, everybody's friendly. Everybody puts so much time and effort into this game to make it something truly special. Especially when you look at the competitive events, they're flying out to these events out of their own pocket. You know, they aren't getting paid from sponsors. They're paying for this with their own money. And it's just a testament how great this game and this community are, that after almost 9 years, it's still kicking. This game is still going, and we still have some of the best charity events, tip of the hats. A great charity event that's raised, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars for children in need and that sort of thing. So the community is really something special in this game. As far as actual gameplay goes, Team Fortress 2 is incredibly deep, both mechanically and strategically. And I think a lot of people overlook that because they see it as this pub game, this silly pub game where you hop in with your friends, you put on your hats, you go around, and you just have a good time, which is great. That's also one of the things that makes TF2 amazing. I've done it, you've done it, everybody's done it, we all love it. That's what TF2 is known for. But behind all of that, there is a ton of depth. You have things like rocket jumping and strafing and all sorts of different things that make this game more difficult. It's extremely easy to pick up, but it's extremely difficult to master. I have over 2,000 hours in this game, and I still have a ton of stuff that I could get better at, a ton of things that I could still learn. And I love that about a game, and that's one of the things that I love about Team Fortress 2 is you can always get better. And one of the last things I want to talk about that is great about Team Fortress 2 is it is free to play. Hey, everybody loves free to play games. That's great to see, and that also makes it super accessible for pretty much anybody with a PC. You log on to Steam, you go to free to play, Team Fortress 2 is right up there at the top of the list. So all that stuff is great. That's what makes TF2 such a great game. The community is so passionate, the game is just a great game, and it's free. I mean, what more could you ask for, really? So let's kind of delve into the concerns, things that you look at and go, huh, maybe that is a reason that Valve isn't wanting to sponsor tournaments. So right off the get-go, let's talk about the competitive scene. We look at the competitive scene, that's what this whole video is about, right? And it's pretty small. Compared to other games with as many players as Team Fortress 2, the competitive scene is very small. And there are a few different reasons for that. One reason I believe is it's kind of not the best spectator sport, in my opinion. A lot of people disagree with me. It's pretty fast-paced, 12 players to keep track of. The main game mode is 5CP, which can be a little stalematey, and players aren't necessarily rewarded for taking those big risks. And Mr. SLIN actually put out a video very recently talking about this more in depth. He knows much more about competitive TF2 and 5CP than I do, so I recommend you check out that link in the description below. He gives a great explanation of why he believes that the 5CP game mode is a little flawed. So that's just one of the issues. The game itself, the way it's played competitively, doesn't necessarily make for the most exciting thing to watch. Coming up right after that is these large events typically result in a lot of expenses. You have to fly out there, you have to pay for hotels, and you have to pay for airfare. And not to mention the people producing the event are hauling their own equipment and paying for their own equipment to produce this. TF2 doesn't really have many sponsors. You look at other games, you look at CSGO, you look at Dota 2, they pay for their players to go places, but TF2 isn't that lucky. At I-58, the largest competitive event this year, only 2 teams were sponsored. The rest of those teams had to pay their own way. they had to rely on the community. And as I mentioned earlier, the community is great. Without the community, these events wouldn't happen. But at the same time, it's very difficult to keep going back to the community and saying, you know, we still need more funds. We need to keep raising money so we can attend these events. So it's difficult for a game to grow and really get out there when there aren't a ton of sponsors that are interested. And why is that? Why do people not look at TF2 and say, this is a game that I want to sponsor? You look at other games and those games are flourishing. They have sponsors coming in all the time. But why is it not like that in Team Fortress 2? And to understand that, you have to look at sponsoring works. It's all about advertising, and in advertising, it's all about the numbers. Sponsors pay people to advertise their products. So the more views an ad gets, the more likely people are to buy it, which means there's going to be more money coming in for that company. Just to give you an example, if 100,000 people see an ad and 1% of them buy the product that's being displayed, that's 1,000 customers. If 1,000 people see an ad, it would take every single one of those people to match that 1%. Now, let's just look at TF2. Look at the view counts. The largest streamer is Banny. Banny gets, 300 to 400 viewers on average? Compare that to some of the other larger streamers, and it's pretty abysmal. It's a lot harder for a company or a sponsor to justify spending money on TF2 when other games get more views. And that also includes Valve. Why would Valve dump money into TF2 when they could see a higher return by putting it into Dota? Valve is a company, and their goal is to make money, so it just does not make any sense for them to put their money into a game that's much smaller with a much smaller audience when they could take that money and put it into another game such as Dota. So those are some of my biggest concerns with competitive TF2 and how it's very difficult to get it up off the ground when we're relying on just ourselves. But if you just talk about the problems, it's not very constructive. There's no way to discuss that any further. You just say, well, you're just complaining. So the community has a few suggestions. I would like to voice those here about what could be done to promote the TF2 community. Earlier this year, Valve did a really good thing by incorporating the in-game stream menu. As a streamer, I saw tremendous growth. My views almost doubled, as did a lot of other people's. And it also helps promote competitive TF2 events because when there's a big event going on, if it reaches, over 500, 600 people, it's guaranteed to be the #1 spot on Twitch for the game Team Fortress 2. So that helped a lot, and then Valve also showed interest because they talked with community members such as Banny and Mr. SLIN, and it shows that they're interested. They want to promote this game mode. But at the same time, that doesn't mean they're just going to open their wallets and say, how much do you need? Without a reason to do that, it's not going to happen, and it's up to us to give them that reason. Something that's not only going to benefit us, but them as well. It's easy to say, hey, you know what, we need, $10,000 for this prize pool because it'd really help benefit our players. It'd really just make our community happy. And they'll say, okay, well, what are we gonna get out of that? So we have to give them a reason to give us money. It has to be something that's also going to give them money. So the first thing that comes to mind is similar to what they've done with Dota 2. And that would be to sell in-game items with proceeds going to a prize pool for large events. And even if Valve took 50%, even if they took 80% of the profits, it would still be a huge step up from what is currently available. Now, there are a few problems, such as who's going to create this item? If Valve does it, they don't really want to take the time out of their day, so it'd have to be a community member, right? And then the community member is going to say, well, hey man, I just spent all this time making this item, I want to cut. So that's an issue, that's something that have to be sorted out. And then another issue is, I simply don't see a Valve sponsored tournament anytime soon. And would Valve be open to attaching their name to something that might not go as smoothly as they'd hope? With a Valve sponsored event, they have complete control, and with a third-party event where they're just putting money into the prize pool, there could be a few hiccups on the way, and it could kind of make them not look as good if the event failed. So there are definitely some risks involved with going that route, giving money to another event that's not necessarily run by them. But I think the upsides are worth it. A higher prize pool is going to incentivize more teams to go to these events, which means more people are going to watch. They're going to say, hey man, instead of playing for like $3,000 for first place, we're going to be playing for $20,000. And everybody will be like, whoa, that's a big deal. We're going to tune into that. So more money and views would lead to growth, and then more growth would equal more events, and the cycle would continue on and continue to build until TF2 kind of became a legitimate esport. But at the same time, there are some obstacles that I think TF2 is going to have to overcome before it does reach that status of a legitimate esport. Uncle Dane mentioned in one of his recent videos that it would be a good idea to standardize TF2 across the board so that Valve's version of competitive and the community's version are the same. I agree with this. I think it's very important to make that transition from the actual game to competitive seamless. I want it to be the same experience. I think it's very important that that happens. I'm not sure how that would work. I'm not sure what changes need to be made, but I think it's very important to make that transition from regular TF2, Valve's matchmaking, to competitive TF2, a big I-58 type event. That needs to be seamless. I also discussed some of my thoughts in an older video about what Valve could do to make matchmaking successful, so if you guys want to take a look at that, I recommend you check that out, link in the description. If you want a more in-depth look on my opinions, that's the video for you. But overall, I do believe TF2 could really grow and become something special. And I don't really see it becoming the size of Dota or CSGO, but even doubling in size would do wonders for the community. And if Valve were to implement these in-game items with proceeds going to competitive events, that's not going to guarantee TF2's success. It takes support from us, it takes support from the community. Because at the end of the day, Valve could throw $1 million into TF2, but if nobody's watching the events, the game's not going to grow. So it's up to us to watch these events, support the community, and hopefully Valve will follow suit. So those are my thoughts. I'd love to hear your guys' opinions and suggestions for what could be done, and if it's a good idea for Valve to sponsor a tournament. So thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll talk to you later. Have a good one, guys. Bye.
This is Heavy Weapons Guy. Thank you for watching Grizzly Berry. Now click that little red button. Ha ha!